Hello, IX ambassadors. It's lovely to see you. Rachel and I are with you early today, and also for an abbreviated period of time. We are swamped.
Right.
So announcements for the day. Bob, our CRO, is no longer with the organization. So there's that.
Next.
And I'm going to be in Aberdeen tomorrow and Friday to keynote the Women's Business Conference for SDCEO, which I'm super excited about. And Shelly McCutcheon will be going with me to do some much needed PR management. Meg is not good at that game. Support. And what else? Are you going to actually be home like for next week?
I think so. It makes me, well, so I was gone for almost 2 weeks, and so I didn't get to see my daughter, so I actually get her kind of 2 weeks in a row, so I get to be home with her for 2 weeks. And then after that, I think I'm off, but I mean, out of town. But I will be home with my daughter for 2 weeks, which is,
yeah.
I'm looking up the things on the phone, so I'm not ignoring you. What else we got going on?
What else? We have lots of meetings with potential clients in the next couple weeks. One is this afternoon. And we just finished recording this morning our final version of, hopefully, final bits of the audiobook.
By the way, Laura's sending me that to the student. She wants a different version.
Is this a bad joke?
No, not to re-record, but to export in a different format.
Oh.
So thanks for that, Laura.
We still love you.
Right.
I
still love you, but it makes me sad.
I think that's all the news for right now.
What else is going on? Seems to be a lot. I guess one of the cool things I did last Sunday, which we didn't really talk about, was I was a judge at the Black Hills Startup Weekend. And it's really cool. It's like basically 2.5 solid days, Friday night to Sunday night, where literally people come up with an idea, they talk to potential customers, they create a minimum valuable product, and then they pitch it to the judges, and then they get voted on. And I always thought this was sort of an eye-rolling, like, oh, please, more startup crap, whatever. But what it was really exciting about is they've kind of changed their messaging so that it's really about developing new business in communities. So it's sort of this nationwide activity that you can join into, but it's really about promoting new businesses in your community. So it's much more about community and building jobs and creating jobs and that kind of stuff. So I just thought it was really cool, especially for people that aren't used to figuring out how to connect their passion with an actual business idea. Anyway, it was super cool. So that was really fun. And so if you have an opportunity to do a startup weekend wherever you are, consider doing it. It's really fun. And they do get a lot of donations about food and drink. So you pay whatever I don't even think it's that much money, but you go Friday night and they pay for food and drink for all day Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And then the judging is Sunday night. So it's an intense weekend. And so for chaos people, it's a little easier to think about getting your head around. For the order people in the room, you might want to go with a group of friends or something, because it's pretty like you just kind of get thrown in and crazy. So to give yourself a little bit more order in the weekend, that might be the way to do it. But anyway, it was really interesting. So.
All right.
Yeah.
So today we're talking about empathy and why it's an important piece of business and not just something to be shrugged off actually as sort of an accident or a factor of psychological dysfunction. So for a lot of years, empathy has been seen, or was seen as sort of a weakness, especially in leadership and in business. And now, then with the advent of servant leadership, empathy was really a big thing for quite a while. I would argue swung too far to swing. It went too far to the other side, where empathy was it was used by leaders and then abused by employees. And so in the book, we talk about empathy separately from accountability, and then empathy and accountability as a strategy. And so the most appropriate way to use empathy in a business setting is actually to pair it with accountability. And what that does is it makes you as a leader seem like a human, but then it also gives you the opportunity to still run the business with logic. So that being human is the empathy part, the logic is the accountability part. And so the questions today.
I've got them right there.
Yeah. How do I be more empathetic without becoming a pushover? Well, exactly by what we talk about in the third section on empathy and accountability. You hold people accountable. And the way to accountability is respect. So you respect yourself, respect the people around you, their time, and give them grace for when things get mucked up, because excuses are reality. Some people make too many excuses, but the reality of excuses is it's real life. And so if you have a little bit of grace, but you hold people still accountable, the best way to hold people accountable, besides respect and in a business setting, is to make sure there's good policy and procedure in place. That gives you a good, what we call business spine, so that you have something to fall back on if you need to address an issue with someone. So if it were attendance, because Rachel could say, well, Meg shows up to late at least twice a week. So just because I've shown up to late to work 4 times a week doesn't mean that I'm any worse than Meg, because next week it might be different. That's why it's important to have a policy, because you can then hold both of those people accountable and say, listen, I understand you have personal challenges in your life, as we all do. I'm willing to work with you in whatever that looks like. Maybe we set your start time back a little bit, or whatever sort of discount you want to offer that person. But if you have the policy and procedure in place, you can, that's your accountability piece.
The other piece I would say too is that in a flexible work environment, like Meg and I don't have, we have things on the calendar, but we don't have really like reporting in time. And a lot of us who are either working for ourselves or higher up in organizations, it's really more about what are your goals and your expected target. So if you get the work done and you can get the work done in 20 hours, then I'm not going to care if you're in the office. If you work 80 hours and don't get the work done, then that's a different challenge. So if you're not tied to, in that example, if you don't have necessarily the processes about being somewhere on time, in the absentee version of this, then it might be that you're tied to your results. And if you don't achieve your results, then that's when the accountability happens. So it does not always, it doesn't have to be tied to certain activity based or things like that. It could be goal related.
Yeah. And I think that, a lot of times probably we would associate pushovers, being a pushover, with maybe stabilizers, because they're team driven. They care about what everybody thinks and how their decisions impact other people. And they want things to be in order, to stay in order. And so we might think that stabilizers are more often a pushover, but we have seen, in fact, that there are pushovers in all 4 different culture types, and it's just a different reason. So stabilizers want to keep people happy and want things to be orderly. Fixers want to work with the team and keep the team motivated and going. And sometimes, we've seen some fixers who really like the chaos. So
right.
They don't hold people accountable and or are not so empathetic, just surely for, I think, the value of having a little bit of chaos.
Mm-hmm.
Independents, because they're self-driven and organizers the same, they just might not see the need to be empathetic because they don't need that kind of attention.
Man, yeah.
So they don't think about it. But then they become a pushover at the point at which somebody says, oh my gosh, you're just not listening to me and you're not listening to my feelings and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a thing for other people. Okay, well, what can I do to make it better? And so you could be a pushover no matter which culture type you are. So don't make the assumption. We've done backwards culture type math and thought, well, someone's a pushover or these are those qualities. Mm-hmm. And they seem too empathetic or they don't have enough accountability with their empathy. They're probably a stabilizer. And then we find out that's not it at all. There's something else. So the warning comes from experience. Don't make the mistake of thinking that you can know someone just simply because it shows mostly characteristics of one culture type.
Well, and I think the other thing to keep in mind as far as that goes too is that we're always saying that the real power of culture types is the team they're embedded in. So another way you can seem to be a pushover is because you've checked out, right? So if you're in an environment if you're in a chaotic environment and you're an order person and you can't really engage with that chaotic environment, a lot of times you'll just check out and not deal with whatever's happening. Or the other way is also true. You get bored as a chaos person in a stabilized environment. So you just check out. So that could be seen as being a pushover, even though the root cause of that is a mismatch in your role or something like that. So it's always more complicated than you think. But once you know your type or their type, you can actually look for those sort of key root causes a lot easier. But it is a trap to assume that you can identify that, because we have trouble with it still, and we do it all the stinking time. So.
And I think to address the same question, but from a different perspective, most of the time we talk, a lot of the times we're talking to leaders, but I would also add that if you're not a leader functionally, your title is not a leadership title within the organization, there's a lot of us who become that are too empathetic. So then we're pushovers, and then we're doing work for other people that is not our work, or we've taken on too many projects that we can't get the work done, and then it looks like our performance is low. And so for those of you who are not in a functional leadership role within the organization, it's really important to write down, keep a priority list of the things that you are doing, and make sure that you actually have enough time to allocate to seeing those projects through to finality. And also write down the things that you don't want to do. And it's one thing to know the things you don't want to do. Like if Rachel said to me, Meg, I'd really like you to start working on the website. And I'd be like, in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, Rachel knows better than ever. That would be the end of our relationship.
It would mean that we were so out of touch that it couldn't go on.
Ugh, I just got a stomachache thinking about it. But if Rachel said, Meg, I really want you to do the website, I would know in my head, like, yeah, right, get lost. I'm not doing the website. So it's one thing to think about it, those things that you don't want to do. It's another thing to actually write them down so that you have that in the back of your notebook or wherever, hanging on your wall if you want it. Maybe you have it actually hanging on your wall and says, please do not ask me to do these things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will not do them unless you're actually my boss, and then it can be discussed. So make sure that you have written down the things that you really don't want to do, the things you don't excel at. If somebody's going to ask you to do something that's chaos or team driven and you're an organizer, don't agree to be in charge of that project because you're going to hate it. And so unless you absolutely have to, and it's only for a short period of time, do not agree to do things that don't serve you.
You're such an entrepreneur. Like, people don't get a choice to say no to things. They have to do them. So if you have to do them,
what did I just say? If you have to.
That's what I mean. But most people do, I think. So if you have to do them, what I guess my advice would be is, how can you make it less, like if there's a chaos thing, if I was going to ask Meg to the website, let's just say, for argument's sake, well, I would know then, or that she would go hire somebody else to do it, because that's not what she's good at. So she's taking that request and saying, yeah, I'll take care of it, but I won't actually do it because it would take her.
I'd die before I ever got anything done. I would probably hate myself.
It's too orderly for her. So, and there's all kind of rules and technology. It's so many reasons as well for Meg. But if you're in an organization where you can't say no, or you don't have that option, try to make it as most aligned with your style as possible. So if you're an organizer, try to get from whoever's giving you this job what exactly it looks like. What does success look like for them? What schedule do they want? Like, ask the questions. It's one thing that Meg and I see all the time. People think that asking questions equals conflict. And that's not it at all. It's really to help get the work done in a way that suits you and suits whoever's asking you, even if it is an awkward fit. Or even if it's not an awkward fit, even if it's a great fit, you still want to understand those things. So that's really a key to understanding yourself and them, is figuring out how you can make yourself be as successful as possible, even in a really awkwardly fitting, request or assignment. Was that the our first question about the being a pushover?
Yes.
I think the other thing that we don't really talk about as much in the book in the right words, but accountability is, Meg's favorite topic. So we talk about that a lot. But another way to frame
Sorry.
Oh my gosh, that seemed like to overtake you all of a sudden.
I would know how you will have to watch the playback because I was going like this for about 10 seconds. I was trying not to let it get me.
But one of the yeah, it is fun. One of the other reframe of that a little bit is that it's about boundary setting, which is what Meg was alluding to, right? Don't agree to do shit that you don't want to do, or that violates the things that you hold, that you have decided not to do. And this actually came up in a group I'm in, a mastermind group I'm in, where the woman was asked to lead a sort of a gala event for their nonprofit, and she is trying to get her business going, and she really didn't feel like it was a good fit, but she didn't know how to say no. And I'm like, well, if you say yes, then you're going to do a half-assed job at the gala, which is the worst thing you could do. You're going to do a half-assed job at your business. And so it's really not about, and so to go back to whoever asked her and say, hell no, I'm not doing that. But you don't say that. You say, well, I would love to be the MC or the host that night or something. I mean, find a way that you can support it while honoring what you need. And so that's not, so that way being a pushover would be say yes to everybody, but you just can't. It doesn't honor you and it doesn't honor them. So that's another way to think about it, is what's the best outcome for everybody? Because there's no doubt you guys can do it. You guys are rock star work harders that can take on anything and get things done. But that doesn't mean that it's going to leave you or the organization in a better place or do it effectively or efficiently. So you do have to just ask a lot of questions and decide what's your zone of genius, basically. All right. What are our other questions? How do I know if I will employ too much empathy?
I can't answer that question. I'm just kidding.
Meg leans hard on the accountability side of the empathy, and
Rachel says I have a gooey center, though.
she does. She's a big gooey center. She doesn't like to admit to. This for me is kind of the root of the Mad Hatter principle, but it can get you in trouble, right? Like, we don't want you to be a pushover, because that's really what too much empathy means, that you let go, you let slide bad behavior or behavior that violates the rules of accountability or boundaries. And so that's how you know that let me see, how do I know? You don't even have to ask that question. When you're letting people take advantage of you. When you're not holding people accountable. And you hope it'll be okay. How often does that ever work out for you?
Never. It doesn't.
0 times. And so it. In your heart, in your intellect that this is not going to work. And so accountability has to be paired with empathy, or else it's a place where you do group hugs and no one's pissed, no one's pissed at each other. But that's just not how business is. Our goal for businesses is to be high-performing, ass-kicking. And that's not what you can do if you're letting people get away with that behavior.
I would say a good thing to do if you know. So if you're one of those people who already knows that they don't know how to say the word no, find someone who does and start running things by them. So my sister, God bless her, she and I, and really frankly, me and my 2 sisters do this with each other a lot. Like, what do you think about this thing and that thing? And if I've been asked to do a third thing, I'm doing these 2 things, I've been asked to do this third thing, what do you think about it? And so find someone you can run things by who will sort of defend you even when you won't, when you're basically your own worst enemy. So that would be my practical tool for knowing how not to be too empathetic and then get walked on.
Yeah, and I think too, the thing to ask that person is for clarity about why and how you can be less empathetic. Because, part of the next question was about being in big business, or how does empathy work with business? And really, if you have all accountability and no empathy, then you're a dictator and you're a jackass, frankly. And you don't want that. right? You want to actually respect and honor your people. That's where the empathy comes in. And so that's the balance. You have to get your work done, and we are all in this together. But at the same time, we have each other's backs. If you come in late on Tuesday, I'm not going to chop your head off for it, because I know you as a human, and I know that that's not who you are. It's just something came up or whatever. So it's really a fine balance. And the people that answered the too much empathy and the pushover questions are clearly not getting that balance quite right. Right. And we've all been with companies or with bosses that don't get the other side right. Right. They're all accountability, no empathy. So it is something that is continually a challenge. So it's not like someday you're just gonna be like, you got it. I got the balance, no problem. It's like fitness, right? You're constantly looking to find that perfect fitness regime, or that the perfect way that you do things. So anyway, so that's empathy. And if you would tell me that I'm empathetic, I would roll my eyes at you. But honestly, the more we work with companies, the more I realize how good we are at empathy in a way that's productive and team building. And I think that's a really key piece that people are confusing empathy, group hugs, with empathy. We got to get things done. So,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so empathy and accountability is a strategy. That's what we talked about today. It's in the 3rd section of the book. You can look through that. And if you have any questions, let us know.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Bye.
See you soon.